Welcome back. I've got Heather Adams on the line. Heather, how are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much, Michael, for having me.
I'm really looking forward to this. As we were talking about this in the pre-show, we had initially lined this up way back, months ago. So when
Yeah.
I looked up on the calendar, I'm like, okay, when was this? And like, whoa, it's like blow the dust off the calendar. Okay, let's see what this is all about. But I'm thankful we're finally here to chat. So why don't you share a
Same.
little bit about you, and then we'll jump into the conversation.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Heather.
So, born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, grew up, went to the University of Georgia for college, studied journalism and communications there, and also a very proud Bulldog. If you're paying attention to our football season, you know that we've got a really good football program, but I'm just really proud of the education I received there and what I learned from one of the top journalism schools in the country. I graduated and I went to work in Atlanta in government communications initially and was a public information officer for a local county government just outside of Atlanta. And then married my husband, and he is born and raised in Nashville, Tennessee, which is where I live now. So I moved here after we got married. We've had two boys who are teenagers. I have one who is a freshman in college and one who's a sophomore in high school. And when I first moved to Nashville, right after Matt and I got married, I went to work in publicity for a book publishing company, one of the big five publishing houses in the States. And um, that's really where I cut my teeth, Michael, on, working with major national marquee media, and my hallmark became taking a Christian author to a secular mainstream audience. And that's really what lit a fire in my belly. And that is where kind of my brand strategy career began because I was working across formats of books. So it would be fiction or leadership or a cookbook or a novel and I was working for the biggest like thought leaders and change agents in the country who, were published authors. And um, I just loved being in that juxtaposition between the client and the media. And I realized how relationally driven all of that was. And then during the recession, got laid off after I had been there the better part of a decade, and I was running the publicity department. And like I'm sure a lot of people, with the market changes, your job sometimes is affected, And at the time, I was really grieving because I felt like it was more than just a job. I really felt like it was a family that I was working with. It was a calling that I felt like the work I was doing was. And I look now, as an entrepreneur and business owner, and I'm like, they were just making a business decision. And the CEO at the time, who is a dear friend and mentor, has told me years later that was the hardest season of leadership he ever had. And I have told him since, thank you for laying me off because it changed the trajectory of my career, which is not what I was, thinking at the time, Michael, as you can imagine. And my husband said something to me that I'll never forget. He said, don't take your next step out of fear. Fear we can't pay our mortgage, fear we can't feed our boys. Our boys were 1 and 3 at the time. And so that gave me permission to really dream, like dream about what I wanted. And I had really built a beautiful career for myself at that point. And so our number one competitor's CEO called, and she invited me to their offices and, said, hey, we need somebody to overhaul our publicity department. We think you're the woman for the job. I didn't know them. That's where I really learned the value of your network and relationships. And they flew me to Michigan. I met with them, and a few weeks later, I was running their department as a consultant instead of as a full-time employee, though. And because I really, learned, Michael, to advocate for myself in that season professionally. It's the first time I ever did that. And I was all of a sudden doing what I wanted on my terms, making a lot more money than I was previously. And so that is what really started that kind of entrepreneurial spirit. I was a consultant running their department, doing what I was really good at and not a whole lot of the other, red tape stuff. And then, I did that for about 4 years just by myself, and I realized that I miss leading a team. I missed, particularly leading women and pouring back into those women kind of coming behind me in my career. And so that's when I launched Choice, which is my business now that's been here for 11 plus years, 11 and a half years. And so I started that in 2014, and it has grown and evolved in those 11 years. And that's where we are, at this point in time. So that's kind of the Cliff Notes version of my career to this point.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And, there's so many things I want to unpack. The first one that just, before I let it go is you had that mentor, in that organization that you were with that, and many of us, uh, were unenjoyed, as I like to call it, during the recession.
Yeah.
And for many of us, very catastrophic. And because it's when you pour your heart and soul into a role, you're giving you, and a lot of people, especially now with people, dealing with burnout, workplace culture, and all the things we see, and I talk about it all the time. But I think ultimately is deep down, we want to do a great job where we are. We want to feel valued. We want to belong. And then
Yes.
when that is taken from us, it is a void. It hurts. It really does. And uh, we learn over time, maybe, that it hurts a little bit less if we know how to navigate it, but it doesn't take away the sting from it. But you had that mentor, and years into being a consultant, you like, you know what? I want a mentor, and that's something that I always encourage people. One, get a mentor. If you don't have one, go find one. And talk to me. I know enough people. So do you. We can probably connect you with somebody that can be a decent mentor to you, but also be a mentor,
Yes.
because we gain experience and tools and things like that that we just nonchalantly just like, yeah, yeah, I did this and I did that, and we don't understand that if we share that knowledge with somebody, you may be able to level them up in their career path and goals a lot faster by doing so. So don't diminish what we do. And one thing too, I want to highlight as well is you'd mentioned when you first you flew up to Michigan, my home state, and you had that chat and you're like, I'm going to be a consultant. I'm not going to work for you. I'm not going to get a W-2 from you. I'm going to be a consultant. And I think what in a way is very ironic for a lot of new entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs that want to start, and I'll not picking on you, but I'll highlight something. When you were with that publishing company before the recession, you were helping all of those thought leaders stand up and be able to promote themselves to say, I am the best thing since sliced bread.
That's right.
I'm gonna make Coca-Cola look small by the time I'm done. Okay. I am the big stuff here. Okay. And you did that and you naturally did that. You encouraged people on that and you succeeded, and they have done quite well in their thought leadership and growth and all of that. But then we look in the mirror and we go, why don't I apply that to me? And I'm
Yeah,
and I'm saying that personally too.
that's
I
right.
I find myself just as guilty, if not more so, that wait a minute, why not me? And we're so good at, lifting people up and doing great things for them. It's like, we could do that for ourselves and we
That's
should.
right.
And we
That's
should.
exactly right, Michael. I have always been the wizard behind the curtain, if you will. My job is to get people on the Today Show and New York Times and People Magazine, to put them front and center in the spotlight. And it hasn't been until I've been well into my 40s that I realized, oh, by the way, you can step into the spotlight yourself. You can apply these same brand strategies, these same principles, these same building blocks, making yourself distinctive, that you have taught all these leaders all these years, so I totally understand what you said. And I'd love to just go back to the mentorship component. I've had so many mentors throughout my life, and not just professionally. Like I have mentors that pour into me about my marriage. I have mentors that pour into me about my mental health. I have mentors that pour into me about parenting, and so what I like to think about is advocating for the Heather on the other side of the mentorship. Sometimes we're afraid to ask, we're afraid to step into that, reaching out and advocating for what it looks like on the other side. And I always think about what I want out of that opportunity. If I sit at the foot of this person and I learn from them and I absorb what I think they have to offer, how is it going to benefit me and how can it be mutually beneficial, instead of just being a taker. And so my way of giving back has always been to pass the baton backward, and to make sure I've been pouring into, the women who are coming behind me. But I think so often we only think about mentorship in that insular capacity of professionally and in our career and somebody that we work for. And there can be so many ways that you are mentored, and you can be mentored by people that you don't have a personal relationship with. I feel like I've been mentored by Sarah Blakely and Alex Hermosi and, like people like that that I have access to, Brene Brown, Mel Robbins, like people that I listen to, I absorb, I get teaching and learnings from, but I don't have direct access to them. So I think when we look at mentorship in that capacity, we can really benefit so greatly from it.
Agreed, and I'm with you 100% on that. Where
Yeah.
you just you find the messengers that resonate with you, and then you got to dig deep a little bit and go, okay, well, why?
Hmm.
Why? In your case, okay, why is Alex? Well, I know why. You just, it's just the
Yeah.
way that he is,
He's a
and
marketing genius. Why would
he
I not
is,
want to learn from him?
yeah,
He's a
and
sales like icon, so it's
oh yeah.
like there's so much good that you can learn from somebody like that, even from afar.
Yeah, and study them, and you go, okay, because there's tons of people that have done great work like Alex has, but again, he resonates with you and with me
Hmm.
and many of the listeners on my show, and I encourage you,
Sure.
go study from the greats. We've done that throughout humanity, through whether it's if you're a person of faith, through scripture or world leaders, we
Right.
look for clues. Why? Because the reason why they're doing what they're doing, obviously, it's helping them with their career and their dreams and their goals and aspirations. But you know what they're doing? They're helping many people do the same thing, and that's passing that baton behind you. It's
Yeah.
look for people
So
like
true.
that, and when you find them, what happens is it it can get you out of those slumps or those moments where you're doubting yourself. You're like, oh, this is not going anywhere. That campaign didn't do what I wanted to do. I sent out those messages and crickets came back, and it's like, why am I doing this? Why are you doing this? Because you have a reason. There's a cause, there's a belief. You know that you can help people, so continue to do so. And when
Yeah.
you're going to find your tribe. Your audience is going to find you, but you have to be out there. You have to do it.
That's
And,
right, and then they
and
celebrate you later. Michael Hyatt, who is the CEO I was talking about before, when my business turned 10 years old, he and his wife came to our celebration dinner, and he, did a little speech and, raised a glass and said, "Welcome to the 4% club." And I said, "What is the 4% club?" And he said, "Only 4% of business owners make it to 10 years or more. Well done, you." And, all those years ago when he laid me off and I was hurt and upset and frustrated and worried and all those, going through all those emotions, I had no idea that years later he'd be raising a glass to me because my business would be 10 years old. And so, you know, getting someone who's invested in you long term as well and believes in you before you believe in yourself is really key to our, success.
so Michael Hyatt's story, more along Thomas Nelson Publishing side of things. And this was during the Great Recession and
Yeah.
2009 to 2010, where I had what I like to call my year of worst case scenarios. And I've talked
Mm,
about it on the show. So, over a period of a year from May 2009 to May 2010, for those that have not heard this story, I had a heart attack at age 40 that should have killed
Oh
me.
gosh, Michael.
17 weeks later, I lost my job during the Great Recession. A few months later, because I was on unemployment and paying $1,000 a month out of pocket for medication because I had no insurance, my car was repossessed and my home was foreclosed. So
Oh my gosh, Michael.
all those things happened in a year. And during that, because I was off 17 weeks before I was let go. So I was
Sure.
recovering from this. So, 40 years old, I was going like crazy, working crazy hours to going to nothing. I couldn't do anything physically or mentally.
Yeah,
And plus, I was on medical leave, so I wasn't able to do anything. So,
right.
what did I do? I became a book reviewer for Thomas Nelson Publishing
Ah!
and reviewed books, from you name it. There was all kinds of stuff. Those books and being a reviewer helped me heal
They fed you probably, yeah.
because I was an avid reader up to, college, and then my reading changed because I was reading textbooks. So I was, doing all of that. And then career, life, family, all that kind of stuff, it kind of got away from me. And then it was like, okay, let's go back to the library. And I was already, reading, prior to all of that, Michael's blog and
Sure.
studying all of that and, trying to be a better leader because I was in a leadership role. I'm like, I want to, find out more about this. So those reading those books helped me kind of repair and heal from that, you know, well, at that point, the other things hadn't happened yet. But you know what? I honestly think I was able to navigate the job loss and the car and the home easier because I was able to read again.
Well,
So
you were pouring into yourself in a different way, you know?
exactly. So, when
Wow.
when you were mentioning when you said Nashville and publishing, I'm like, I'm pretty sure I know who it is. And
Yeah.
then you mentioned my Mr. Hyatt's name, and I'm like, see, I told you in the pre-show I was going to bring in a story. I did
I
not have
know, look at
I
this, look at how we're connected. This is proof that the world is so small.
Oh, very, very 0 degrees of separation, quite frankly. But no, thank you for sharing that. And again,
Thank you for saying that. Oh my gosh, I'm
it's just one of those things, and I love how he and Gail, came to your event and said, "Welcome to the 4%." My organization hits 10 next May, and I did not know that stat either. So
right? It's
I'm
so
not
fun.
I'm probably not going to throw a party or anything like that, and I certainly don't expect Michael Hyatt to show up. But it shocked the crap out of me if he did. But he would have to know where to go. But in May, who knows? I might be in Anaheim doing a talk at that point. So I think it's in May.
Well, the
Anyway,
4% Club, you will welcome you in May. That's exciting for
beautiful.
you.
But see, what we're talking about, folks, is we're just if you have something in you that's like, I want to do this, do it. There's a reason why it's in there. There's a reason why you're being pulled that way. Because if you're like, "Oh, I'm not sure what I want to do," it's like, well, ask yourself, what do you want to do? And look for it. It'll show up. And when it does, go for it. Because you know
Well,
what? Go ahead.
and I will say this too, Michael, when that happened and I got laid off, and my husband said those things to me about, don't take your next step out of fear. One of the things he said was, instead of having your quality of life by what's left over in the margins, think about the quality of life that you want for yourself now and build your job around that quality of life instead of the opposite. Like, oh, whatever you get what's left over after your job. Instead, decide. And I did that with choice and with my career at that point, and it changed my life. I was sacrificing my family and my health and all these things all those years, and, that I think that was one of the reasons I was so resentful when I got laid off is I've sacrificed all these things for y'all, and here I am, being let go. And I was like, never again will I sacrifice my family. Never again will I sacrifice my health. And so that having changing that narrative in your head or that mindset of, oh well, this is all I get to do because I have this job, like really reframing that of this is the life that I want and how can I have my work go around that. That really changed really how our home and work life dynamic was. It really did.
Yeah, it's a struggle that so many people deal with, but the way you approach it is I'm one that I encourage people to do. It's like you have your work around your life, not your life around your work. Because
That's right.
when you do that, when you are actually working, you are fully present, you're actually engaged. Because we see the Gartner stats and all that, like 20% of people are engaged. I even think that number might be inflated a bit, depending on where you are in the world and industries and whatnot. But I look at that and I go, that's no way to exist, and it doesn't have to be that way.
That's right.
And I'm not telling everybody, to quit their job and go launch your own business because this is not for the weak.
No,
And as we've said on a couple occasions, 10 years, only 4%. That's such an astonishingly known a low number
it is.
because, well, you and I both know what does it take? Uh, you know, this dash of tenacity, this dash of grit, a little dash of stupidity, maybe, a little dash of, unwillingness to, go back. Actually, that's a big dash. So that's like, you go, no, no, no. And then you say, well, you could go back. No, that's all right. I'm back to it. Back to
That's
the
right.
slide deck. Let's do this. Yeah, yeah. Back to the outreach calls. Yep, let's back to it because we realize it's not that we don't want to do something else. I mean, that's a part of it, but I think a big part of it too is we know once we connect, we know what we're supposed to do. And,
Yeah.
when we dive into that, is it easy? No. Is it worth it? Oh my goodness. Yes, it's worth it. So, in closing, what would you like to share, in addition, obviously, to your organization or anything else that comes to mind?
Well, based on what you've shared with me about your incredible listeners, I would just say, um, my encouragement would be, you have it all within you already. That you are very capable, you are worthy, you are valuable. And so, whether you're inside someone else's organization or you're thinking about launching something for on your own, or maybe you're like me and you're 11 and a half years into being an entrepreneur, like you have it within you. And what I have learned so much over these years is that gut feeling that you have, that instinct, that the Holy Spirit, whatever you want to call it, you have this knowing within you of what work you're called to do, what steps to take, how to move forward in your, and you should be listening to that over and over and over again. Every time I have gone against it, it has played itself out, right? And every time I've listened to it, it's played itself out. And so just you have that capability, um, you have that worthiness within you. You don't have to go and change yourself in order to bring value to somebody else or to your own organization.
Very wise words. So,
Yeah.
love this conversation, Heather. Where can people find out
Same.
more about you and all this amazing work you're doing?
Well, on social media, I'm happy to connect. All of the, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, it's Heather Dixon Adams, and Dixon is Dixon, Heather Dixon Adams. And then my business is Choice Media and Communications. So our website is choicemediacommunications.com. We would love to connect with you. We offer free brand strategy consults with Deidre, who is the head of our client acquisition department. So if you're ever in need of brand strategy, brand identity, revenue generation, publicity or marketing efforts, we'd love to connect with you there.
Awesome. And I'll definitely have that in the show notes. So thank you for this wonderful talk, for taking me down memory lane a little bit as well.
Yeah.
I'm really glad we finally got to do this. So thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you, Michael. Such a pleasure to be with you.